Welcome to Life as a Soldier podcast, a Demon Radio production. My name is Command Sergeant Major Albert Serrano, also known as Demon 7, and I will be your host. Make sure to like and subscribe to this podcast to hear the stories and lessons learned from some of the bravest and hardest working men and women in the United States Army. All right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to episode 4 of our podcast titled Life as a Soldier. I am Command Sergeant Major Serrano, aka Demon 7, and as always, I'll be your host for today. In today's episode, we'll discuss one of the most crucial, I think, anyway, parts of being in the military, and that is finding a right amount of balance between what we do in our profession and our family. We're simply calling it Family Matters. But before we begin in our discussion, I would like to give our guests an opportunity to introduce themselves. And when you do, for all of you on the line, please state your name, rank, what you're currently doing in the brigade as far as your duty, your family, and your hobbies. So let's begin with HHC. Who do we have on the line?
Hey, Sergeant Major, how you doing? It's Captain Clark here. So I'm the HHC commander, Captain Clark. Married, been in the Army about 8 years. Hobbies, I like traveling, hiking, and biking. I also enjoy hunting in the winter and fall.
All right. Welcome and thanks for joining us, sir. Let's see, 1-6. Who do we have on the line?
Good afternoon. This is CWG Torres. I'm a pilot in Bravo Troop 16, and I've been in, it'll be 15 years this July.
And I'm Chaplain Zach Jones. I'm also with 16, and I have been in for 8 years in 4 days. Been married for 5 years, and my hobbies are running and CrossFit.
All right. Well, gentlemen, thanks for joining us from Korea. Do appreciate it. Who do we have on the line from 1-1?
Good afternoon, Sergeant Major. Sergeant First Class Burfato. I'm currently the S3 NCOIC, currently over here in Estonia. Been in the Army just over 18 and a half years now. This will be my sixth overseas tour. And at home I got a wife, 2 kids. It's actually my oldest son's 8th birthday today, so whenever he wakes up, I'll get to talk to him. Not a whole lot in the hobbies. I like to work on my house, get it all ready so I can eventually sell it when I'm getting ready to retire. So that's kind of my main thing right now.
Hey, great. Sergeant Burfato, thanks for joining us, and tell your son, I think you said, happy birthday from all of us here.
I appreciate that, Sergeant Major.
All right, 3-1. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Sergeant Major. I'm Sergeant Tillman. I've been in the Army 6.5 years, married for almost 6 years now, coming up in a month. I got 2 boys. One of my son's birthday is up actually next week. And my hobbies are fishing and hiking.
All right, well, welcome, Sergeant Tillman. Thanks for joining us today. Okay, as I stated previously, and I think this is all of us here for today. So again, I really do thank you for joining me today and discussing our families and our work. One of the things that I'm going to throw out there, and I'll give you my personal opinion, but we hear the word balance a lot in the Army. So how do we balance family and military life? And I'll tell you, I'll hit 28 years of service here in 4 days. And my wife will be the first to tell you that it has not been easy, especially being married to this guy. And so, I don't know. I don't necessarily agree that the balance is the right word, because in my opinion, there's really no balance. Our profession, our military life will kind of take priority lots of times on things that we need to do, as you all know. And we really don't have much to say, on that aspect. However, I do agree that we have got to prioritize our families, our significant others, our children, because there will be life after the Army. And, for all of us. And I don't know about you guys, but for me, I don't want to retire and be out there by myself. I would like to have my family still there. And so I'll share with you, again, after almost 28 years of service, some of the things that I do or have learned to do to maintain a healthy relationship with my family is, these are just some examples. I would like to hear from all of you. But for me, especially, I would say in the last 10 years of my life, when I sort of had a little bit to say about what the Army is going to do with me, I've included my wife and my children in discussing, hey, where would you guys like to go? Where would you like to be stationed next? And as we all know, we don't always have a say in that either. But oftentimes we get a, at least to pick our top three, if you will. And so I let my family kind of, chime in where they would like to go, as well as, do we live on post or off post, the kind of house we decide on. That way they feel like, they also have some say and some ownership in it. I also make time, and my wife will debate this with me as well, but I make time for date nights, and try to set aside some time for my wife and I away from my daughters, because that's important, I think, at the end of the day. I try not to miss any of my kids' events, obviously, school, JRTC, sports, whatever the case may be. And I've also, especially later here in my career, I've talked a lot more about my job, my day-to-day routine, and the things we do. For example, while we're all out here in Europe or in Korea, just kind of include them. I know when I was a younger soldier, I didn't always do that as well, and so I find that being able to discuss the things that I do, for my job, that makes my family feel like they're part of this adventure, if you will. So with that, I would like to hear from whoever wants to go first, and kind of that on that topic is what do you do to maintain a healthy relationship with your family? Whoever wants to go first.
I think that it always, in terms of what the specifics are, depends on the context of what you're going through. Like what you do in a rotation is going to be a little bit different than what you do when you're back home. But for me and for my wife, how we do things has a lot to do with how we express and receive love. For example, my wife really responds well to acts of service. As you can imagine, being on a rotation makes it kind of difficult to serve my wife. And so I have to think to myself, I have to get creative here and say, what am I going to do while I'm gone to maintain a healthy relationship, knowing how my wife receives love. And so on this rotation, what we've been doing, what I've tried out, is a couple of things. Number one, my wife was getting ready to graduate law school, so she was busy. So we got her a meal plan, right? With a green chef is what it was called, I think. And then another part of it was getting a cleaning service to come and clean up the house for her a couple times a month. So that way she didn't have to. So those things that like I could do in person, like cook and clean and take out the trash or whatever, those things that showed her that I loved her, that I saw her, and that I knew how she received love. Since I can't do it myself, hiring an organization to come and help out with those things was a great way to show love. And another thing that I'm sure a lot of us can relate to is just making the conscious decision to make time for your family while you're gone. And so rather than hijack the conversation, I'll stop it there, but I think that that's something we need to be thinking about and talking about, especially in our non-combat rotation, is, am I making the conscious decision to step out of that, that party early or whatever, and have that phone call or that Skype date, knowing that my family's forever. Someday I hang up the cape, but the goal is to get to the finish line with my wife and I intact.
Those are great points, Chaplain. I appreciate it. In my household, I'm usually the cleaning service, as you stated, but that's a great idea. To hire somebody to do that for your wife. That's a great point. Thank you. Somebody else?
Hey, Sergeant Major, it's Captain Clark here. So for me, I think a big key in a successful relationship in the military is just communication with your spouse. Over communicate with your schedule, with your training schedule, and then you can kind of identify periods of time where more family time is available, and then periods of time where less family time is available. But communicating that to your spouse and your kids, if you have kids, so they have that expectation, like, hey, Dad's not going to be around this month because he's at NTC, or he's preparing for NTC, or he's preparing for deployment. But then, hey, this time period from this month to this month, there's really not too much on the training calendar. He'll be able to come home more, maybe plan a trip, weekend trips or something like that, so you can maximize that time. But communicating, I think, is key, and that builds that expectation management with your family to know when you're available and when you're not, and that can avoid potential fights or tension between the service member and their family. Over.
Oh, you know what? So that's a great point. You bring up something that all of us serving, I know we can agree on, that we could always, that we would like more predictability, right, for our schedule and for any training events, etc. So giving that to our families, as you stated, I think that absolutely is beneficial for the expectation management piece, as you stated. Great point, sir. Thank you. Anybody else on this question or topic?
Yes, this is Chief Torres here. So one of the things that I like to use, especially now in where we're at technology-wise, it's readily available. And I use an app called Voxer, and it's really good. I have 5 children, and it's nice, even though I might have 5 minutes to myself in between mission planning or flights, that I can send a direct message to my wife addressed to my children, a specific child, and knowing that they're asleep, but in the morning when they get up, they'll hear it, and when I'm awake, I can respond to it. So that's one of the ways that I work around the schedule. My wife, she makes time for us, and as I make time for her. With time zone difference, with the kids, it's a lot more difficult with school schedules and early bedtimes. So that's just one of the things that I use to kind of help out.
Hey, appreciate that, sir. I never heard of that app, and that's great. I wrote that down because I have not used that. But I agree with you that our significant others, our spouses, generally we find the time to conversate or whatever for a few minutes. But it is difficult with children, and if you have teenagers like I do, 2 teenage daughters, I mean, half the time, I have to just kind of time it right, because even if they're home, sometimes with their friends or doing other things. So, but I think that's a great idea, and I appreciate you sharing that app, sir. All right. As we continue to talk, I'd like to, throw something else out there for discussion and see what you guys think of this. What do you guys think are some of the most common issues that we've seen in families, as far as what they have to deal with, especially when we're, not necessarily home, and how can we address them? What can we do better?
I was actually trying to think about something. Sorry, Major. The biggest issue I think someone actually brought up earlier was the time constraints. Like for me, example, hours here. By the time I'm waking up, my family's already in bed, so I don't get to see my children during the week. And then by the time they get home from school, and the wife gets them settled, makes dinner, it's already time for me to be asleep again. So time management, like I talked about earlier, is really difficult. Usually I have to catch them first thing in the morning before school. But since it's just the wife at home, thankfully she is experienced with having kids and being on these deployments. It's still a lot rough on her. She has to get the kids ready, get them to school, then she has to get back and get home and get to work. It's kind of touching on the topic earlier. One of the things we talked about is how, for me anyway, this is most likely going to be my last tour. I just got back from Afghanistan 9 months ago. Now I'm here, and this will hopefully, assuming that my retirement packet gets accepted, this will be my last one, which is kind of one of the chants and our little mantras we keep telling ourselves every day is, this is the last one. So just trying to find that balance to where I can work around her schedule to find that few minutes of just seeing my boys and her in the morning, chatting for a little while, and then getting them to school on time while they're getting dressed. It's difficult to find that balance, but you do what you can when you can, as often as you can, just to remind your kids and your family that you're still there, you still support them, and then making sure again that like everyone else, that having that support network for your spouse, whether it's a him, her, kids, maybe you got your kids dropped off with, family members. It's just having that support network to let them know that, hey, if you need a break, you just make a phone call and that family or that friend will be down there in no time to give you her or him that time they need to just separate, decompress, and just relax, and then counting down the days until you get back. I think that's one of the ways my family's helped make it work for my wife, my brothers and sisters, and my mom. Write her almost daily to make sure she's doing okay and asking how I'm doing. So that's one of the ways she's been able to keep her sanity as best as possible with our 2 boys running all over the place.
Okay, yeah, great points. Appreciate that, Sergeant Burfato. How about you, Sergeant Tillman? What do you think?
I agree with Sergeant Burfato, just the different time zones and time constraints, because, when I was in Korea, just find the time between my schedule and my wife's schedule, because she works full time with her job while trying to take care of 2 kids. So every time I call, she's usually at work, you can't talk, or she's just getting off work and going to put the kids to bed. So it's just always been constantly trying to find that right time to call or get a hold of them to let them know that I still here, I'll be home soon, and getting to see my kids and talk to them on a consistent basis. But it's a little difficult sometimes.
And definitely difficult, Sergeant Tillman. Thank you. Hey, I'd like to offer up something for you guys here, and that is, so all of us on the net today are leaders, in some form or fashion. So I'll tell you some of the challenges that I'm seeing now on our current deployment, whether you're in Korea or in Europe, is some of the young soldiers, and by I mean young, is they're straight out of AIT. they arrive to Fort Riley and are having some difficulties in getting them out here or over, whether you're again in Europe or Korea. So I'll tell you that when I think of, what are some issues, common issues that I've seen with families, and what we could do better. So what comes to mind, obviously, is that anxiety of a first deployment, whether they're married or single. I'm talking soldiers now. What do we do as leaders to kind of, ease that anxiety, kind of help them cope with that so that they realize that, being on a deployment, albeit, away from our family, which, oh, by the way, is the worst part of being a deployment, in my opinion, is that, it is the best time to build a team, right? To get to know your soldiers, to get to know each other, to work hard, etc. And so some of the things I've been thinking about since we've been out here, for me in Germany, although currently in Romania, is, maybe reaching out and doing some form of a newcomer's brief, if you will, on teams where not only leaders are talking to the soldiers, but hey, welcome aboard, and we really need you out here. You're a big part, a huge part of our team, but maybe having some of our soldiers that are, same rank, that are out here with us, that are having a good time, that are getting after it, so that they could see that, it's not, that anxiety that they have is something that we can deal with, and potentially we can deal with it together. What do you guys think about that?
Sergeant Major, I'll chime in. I've had a couple of, I sponsored a few soldiers when I was in Ready Reserve because I came out here a little later than most people. And even when I got out here, a lot of them were texting me a lot of those questions about where we're going, what we're doing, this, that, and the other. I think that if Rear Detachment had something like that set up, and then they would have at least one person, designated, kind of like what we're doing right now, designated to kind of get on the line and do a Microsoft Teams where the soldiers, can ask questions about over here. It would help them a little bit. It may not necessarily ease their mind per se, because I know they have to go over, but at least it'll give them a better idea of what they can expect while they're out here, whether it's training, barracks, all that stuff. It helps to know someone who's out here and actually going through it versus hearing stories about last deployment or last rotation. They get a firsthand view of everything that's going on here. Not necessarily, psych them up for it, but getting that better idea, at least they know what they're walking into, might put their minds at rest a little bit and give them a better idea of why we're out here and what we're doing, what our mission is.
I 100% agree with you, Sergeant Burfato. Thank you for chiming in. And I forgot you did spend some time in the Ready Reserve there, helping us get soldiers out of here. So I appreciate that.
I mean, the concept sounds like a good idea, assisting, preparing somebody mentally for what they're about to go into. But I think this is coming from a place of complete honesty. If you told me I had to attend a class a month before I had to deploy, leave my family, even if it was for an hour, I'd be a little disgruntled just for the fact that you're taking additional time away from me. I mean, that might not be the right answer as a leader, but that's the truth as a human being. Like, I remember when I came back from my first deployment from Iraq, we were having about one suicide a week at Fort Campbell, and the division's response was, let's have everyone come in on a Saturday to do 2 to 3 hours of suicide prevention training. And I've seen firsthand how it affects people's morale when you make these mandatory trainings. I would say they had something similar to that where people could record it, like somebody could pre-can a Q&A and put that out there so that people that want to get it, that information can get it. But I would say making it mandatory for soldiers to listen to, maybe not the best option for most.
Sorry, we're sharing a computer. So Chaplain Jones here. I think to add a different side of that as well, I think we're going to have a class or something that to help bring information. It might be good to structure it such that it's designed not just for the soldier, but for the families as well. But something where, just I'm thinking about this pastorally as a chaplain, where a lot of the things that I encounter, that the problems that I'm helping soldiers navigate through, it just seems like if the families were brought into that situation a little bit more, where the dialogue was, here's what you can expect collectively as a family, here's the kind of tools that you have at your disposal as a family, here's what the different phases of adaptation to a rotation look like in a family unit, here's how it might manifest itself, here are the common problems that families have during rotations, and here's what reintegration can look like when you get home. Doing that as a family, as opposed to taking away those soldiers from their families more than you're already about to for those 9 months, might be a good solution, because it puts the whole family in the driver's seat, where they can sit there together and say, oh yeah, come to think of it, because my personality is like this, I might have a problem with this aspect of it. So you start troubleshooting early on before it happens, and you mitigate a lot of the anxiety and the pain and some of the marital issues that come with the rotation, as well as family issues and parenting issues that might manifest by just being unprepared as a family unit.
Well, great points for both of you, and I'd like to, touch a little bit on both of those, and I'll start with Mr. Torres. So I don't disagree with you, sir. Having again done this for a little while now, there have been many times where I've had to come in and do briefings and do other things, sometimes on the weekend, or not. But I could have been doing some stuff with my family. I agree with you on that. On the chaplain's notes, because I'm going to go ahead and circle back on both of them. But on chaplain's notes, I also agree with you, chaplain, that we have got to do better in incorporating our families, especially our young families, into military life. I totally 100% agree with that. And so again, I was just kind of spitballing with an idea, but about the newcomers brief, because we do newcomers briefs in some way, shape, or form. At all levels, I think every echelon. But what I'm saying is I think maybe as you said, to record them or something like this on Teams. I think we can get after both. I think we don't have to do it on the weekend. And now I'm specifically speaking about the soldiers we have there now, potentially coming out of here to us, to Europe or Korea. And that is having the teams not on the weekend, where family members can come in and sit down with the Red Reserve leadership, with our leadership, with soldiers that, again, that are, that have something in common, that are the same rank, etc. And just kind of talking about everything, kind of like we're doing here. And then granted, all of us sitting here discussing right now, we've been doing this for a little while. But we can share some of the things you gentlemen brought up, as far as the difficulties with being deployed, with the stress, with finances, etc. So again, I think that there's definitely improvement that can be made. And again, the newcomers brief on Teams is just something new. Obviously, when I came in the Army, there was no Teams, so you had to come in person. But I think we could definitely get creative and do a better job with this. Does anyone else have any thoughts on this specific question I threw out there? Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and move along, and I'd like to ask you guys. We've been kind of discussing this already, but I'd like to know maybe a little more details. Like, how important do we think, and by we, I mean us soldiers, obviously, having the good balance between the work and life is to our overall health or careers or life, really. And what I mean specifically is. So if you're trying to get a degree, let's say an associate's, a bachelor's, a master's, whatever the case might be, that takes a lot of time, as we all know. And you're trying to get promoted, and you have to study for the board, and you have to get your record straight. You have to take a photo, all those things. And, oh, by the way, you have a family, and you have to spend time with your family. How do you think you kind of break that down so that you can continue to progress in your career, continue to get promoted, achieve the goals that you want to achieve, and not leaving your family behind?
So for me, it just comes down to just managing my time the best that I can. So maybe having an hour a day to study for a board or promotions or like that, everything in the military, or getting my record straight. Then maybe have an hour or two to do my work, classwork for my school, and get that done. And then take 3 to 4 hours out of the day to kind of spend more time with my kids, my family, take them out to dinner, go see a movie, or out to the park or something like that.
Okay. Yep. It's a tough act to balance all of that, but those are great points. Captain Clark, what do you think?
Sergeant Major, I think it's just, when you got all those items to juggle, it's really time management that comes to the forefront of my mind. And, whether you're going to have to sacrifice. For me, so I've been doing college online, trying to balance my work and then spend some time with family. And for me, that means, waking up earlier before PT to knock out some of the work, my regular, commander duties. And that way it buys me time on the later end of the day to come home earlier and spend time with my wife. So, that means a little less sleep for me, but ultimately I achieve my work goals, I achieve my personal goals and get my degree. So it just, I think it's time management, time balance, but then also, that you're going to have to sacrifice somewhere. There's only so many hours in the day. So to me, it's less personal time for myself to achieve those goals, but it's not forever. My degree will come, and then once I'm done with that, I can revert a couple couple more hours back to personal time or family time. But I think time management and sacrifice is definitely the way to go. Over.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you, sir. Time management is key, and unfortunately, not all of us are great at that. But sacrifice, that is huge. I mean, we sacrifice a lot, but more importantly, our families sacrifice a whole hell of a lot, and we all know that. And it's tough to find that balance. Like I said, that's why I began this session with saying that I don't know about if balance is the exact right word that I would use when I'm speaking about my work and my family. Hey, Chaplain, I'd like to know what do you think when you speak to soldiers, when soldiers come in and talk to you, whatever time or you're doing PT or otherwise, what is the biggest thing, I guess, or the most common thing that soldiers talk to you when they're talking about stressors in their life as far as the military goes?
Chaplain Jones here at 1-6. So, like, just generally, the biggest stress that I see is whether or not it's true, I'll leave it. It's always circumstantial. It depends on the person, but the perception of being overworked to the degree that they feel they don't have time for their families is kind of what I hear. Now, my response to that is typically, generally, without giving away any specific examples, like what are you like doing with your evenings when your wife is now awake, right? Let's say it's like over here we're 14 hours from Central Time, so it's 10 p.m. here and it's like 8 a.m. there, right, or something like that. 6 a.m. there, yeah, whatever it is. And it's like, okay, she's awake, you're awake, what are you doing? And the answer is typically something like, well, I'm playing video games, or I'm playing spades with my friends. I mean, those things have their place. That's absolutely true. But we're all about that, like, we sacrifice, right? We have that selfless service for the military. We have to have that same mindset for our families. The reality is that some of the stressors that we have on rotations can be mitigated if we're willing to say, you know what, instead of playing cards or video games with my friends tonight, I'm going to have a couple hours and talk with my spouse and talk with my kids. So that is typically how that issue plays out in my experience. There are some cases where, yeah, maybe they're being a little overworked and they need the opportunity to make the phone call, but I think a lot of times we inflict that harm on ourselves when we just don't make the right priorities in our lives.
Yeah, thanks for that, Chaplain. I appreciate that, because I didn't want you to get in too detailed, obviously, but I totally agree with you. I think as I go around and talk to soldiers of all ranks, really, I think that we've been talking about what's more important. Is it finding the right time to talk back home with the families? Is it work? Is it recreational activities, etc.? I think we just need to educate soldiers better, especially the younger ones, and on how to how to get after the things that are really important. Not that we hear all the time everything's important, and it is, but there's absolutely the right time for family. There's the right time for work, and for everything else that involves in our military life. Sergeant Burafado, what do you think?
I apologize, sir. Maybe something broke up real bad out there. Can you repeat that one more time?
Yeah, no, I was just saying, what do you think as far as the discussion that we have? Unless you didn't hear any part of it.
I was trying to listen as best I could, but everyone's transmissions kept cutting in and out. The internet here is terrible, sir. Major, I'm so sorry.
No, you're fine. Okay, Sergeant Tillman, back to you then. What do you think?
Nothing really. Just making those sacrifices throughout the military. I've had to sacrifice a lot of my time, my sleep schedule, just to spend more time with my kids or my family, or staying up late at night to try and get some study a little bit more for some stuff.
Okay. And lastly, I'd like to hear from you, Mr. Torres, being that you are our only pilot here on the line today. So what do you think as far as, if I remember correctly, sir, you said you have 5 children, and obviously your spouse, but, obviously you got to get after missions, RO progression, A parts, etc. How do you strike that balance?
Yeah, Sergeant Major. So it is a tough balance. I think it's something you kind of pick up early in the phase of flight school with that balancing. It's a challenging time. So the way I balance things is I don't really have much decompression time. I give myself about 2 hours a night for decompression, and majority of that is kind of figuring out what I'm going to do the next day and how I'm going to speak to my kids. Because I think the big thing with having children, and as strange as it sounds, when you have 5, you really realize that each one of these is a completely different individual, and how are you going to engage that person and kind of excite them? So one of the things that I do to kind of get that excitement with them is I usually ask, what's the best part of your day versus how's your day going, and it kind of gets them it makes them kind of think. But to get back on track with what you're asking, how I kind of strike a balance, that Voxer app works really well. Writing letters helps, but I think the big part of it is not quantity so much as it is quality. So it's more down to the nitty-gritty relationship aspect of speaking to your family and not just blindly listening to them and just blatantly speaking about your work day. It's more along the lines of how you're feeling and what your dreams and aspirations are, what theirs are as well, and what their fear and anxieties are, and addressing those things, especially with being away, kind of that reassurance for the family. Sorry, kind of went on a tangent there. I hope that kind of answers the question.
No, sir. No, that was great. No, I appreciate that. I mean, like I said, you have a fairly large family, so I can only imagine, you and your wife really having to balance between your 5 kids. But that's awesome. I appreciate you, sir. So let's change gears just a little bit, if we could, and let's all think back that we're back at Fort Riley now. And so what I'd like to do is I'm going to go down the line each one of you. But what I would like to know is, so let's think back at Riley and hopefully pre-COVID. What are some of the resources or places that we have at Riley that are available for us and our families to enjoy activities, basically to bond, leisure type activities in the area? Hopefully, like I said, you could think of some, because I know a lot of stuff was restricted due to COVID. But it is opening back up. Unfortunately for us, we're here, but that's okay. But what do we like to do there that we have around Fort Riley that benefits our families? Let's start with you, Captain Clark.
Well, Sergeant Major, I think best thing, at least when we got to Fort Riley, was just kind of connecting with some of the other spouses. Have my wife meet some of the other spouses, and they would tell us, like, hey, go out, check this restaurant out, go check this winery out, go check this brewery out, or whatever. And just using the guys who have been here a little while to find all the cool areas. Because I mean, some military bases, you think like Fort Polk, it's crap. But there's always stuff to do around bases, and it's just finding those people that know all the secret cool places. And so just connecting with those individuals who have been at that base for a while, I think is critical. And then also you make friends too. So just getting your family or spouse out to the FRG, even though a lot of times spouses don't want to, but at least go to a couple, because chances are you'll meet someone who you identify with, or your spouse will, and then they can connect, and then you get the network going on all the cool things that are available on Fort Riley itself. Like I said, I like to hunt, so there's great areas in the training area to go to. There's great fishing at Moon Lake and some of the other smaller ponds in the training area. So, just linking in with the MWR Outdoor Rec is another good resource that you can go to, and they've got all sorts of outdoor recreation as well as rentals for boating, even tickets for Disney World and stuff like that. So that's my take on that, Sergeant Major.
No, all great points, sir. I appreciate that. Let's go out to Korea, Mr. Torres and Chaplain Jones. What do you guys like to do back at Riley?
Yeah, Sergeant Major. So one of the things we like to do is just outdoor recreational activities. There's a ATV trail there at Fort Riley that's really nice. So if you have little ones or kids that are interested in like motorsports, ATV dirt bike trails / off-road trails, really, really easy access, really fun trails there. And then another thing is, of course, the lake, and MWR is a great resource. They rent out boats and pontoons as well as camper trailers. Is another good opportunity to utilize the Army's what's already there for us. That's one of the things we like to do during the spring and summer, Sergeant Major.
Yeah, for my wife and I, we actually we PCS to Fort Riley like 6 weeks before I went on rotation. So, but in that 6 weeks, we were quickly able to find things to do there that we've loved to do in other locations. We're really outdoorsy, so we love to hike. We love to go check out new sites, and so we spent a lot of time on trails. One that comes to mind that is really fun and really windy, and you have a couple different route options is the Kanza Trail, which is not too far away from Fort Bragg. I think it's like a 25-minute drive, and we enjoyed hiking that one, and there was a couple other ones that we really enjoyed hitting. And really, like, for people who are looking to get like some kind of city life and go try out cool restaurants and stuff like that, now that they're opened up, you can go check out Kansas City as well, which isn't super far away. So I would encourage guys who are looking for things to do and feel like they're stuck in their homes playing video games or just binge watching Netflix, take a 2-hour drive to Kansas City. Like, there's really cool restaurants. My wife's like a vegetarian, so try one of those. It's kind of weird when you're eating grass, but my wife loved it, and so it was a great bonding experience. We had a good time. Yeah, she eats what our food eats.
Oh, that's great. Great. Appreciate you two out there. You mentioned some of you three, really, Captain Clark included. You so far. You guys have mentioned some of the absolute things that my wife and my family and I like to do as well. Kansas City, I'm looking forward to that when I get back, Chaplain, because I want to go eat some ribs over there, and I haven't got a chance to. So looking forward to that. Sergeant Burfighter, what do you think?
So fortunately, the area of Junction City, or actually not, it was closed obviously, but now that's opening up. We're not that far away from a nice big park that's right next to the pool in Junction City. My kids are water babies. They absolutely love going to the pool, so we did that a lot last summer. I'm hoping once this opens up and whenever my wife has her weekends, she could take the kids back over to the pool. We've been using the park as it opened up. That was one of the few places that stayed busy almost all year round. So whether it's in town or even on post, some of the smaller parks out there, they love running around playing. My kids do go home. They like to play little video games. They like to watch their YouTube. So we obviously give them their time at home to relax for them. One of the few things my wife has traditions, like there's something for my little kids to look forward to, is that each day of the week they get to pick what they want to eat, and it's like their restaurant. That's something they look forward to. My son loves Taco Tuesday, so he gets all excited about that. Every Friday they go to Cracker Barrel, so they actually get to get out of the house and go eat at a restaurant instead of just being cooped up all day long. Something they look forward to, which they really enjoy. And my wife and I, we like to travel as well. So when Kansas City was open, we love going out to those places, roaming around. Definitely agree with you on the barbecue there, Sergeant Major. Definitely want some good barbecue, but until that happens, my wife keeps me happy, taking me to Bourbon and Baker's every once in a while. Biggest thing we learned, though, is taking advantage of the daycares. What do they call it? The date night. Drop the kids off later on in the evening. The daycares watch the kids for a couple hours, and the wife and I can go out and just decompress. We can have dinner, go see a movie, just do whatever the heck we want, and that gives us our freedoms. So even my wife was talking about doing it for herself, just getting a night to go get her hair done, her nails done, if their place is still open, or just sit at home in complete silence and just relax and get her rest and relaxation for the evening. She talked about doing that a few times, and that's really helped her. She enjoys getting a nice hot bath without two kids running in and out all the time. So if that gives her a few hours reprieve, I'm all for it.
Yeah, that's great. Great. Sergeant Tillman, what do you think?
So yeah, a lot of great programs that we like to use is the MWR Recreation Center for me and my wife to go rent a boat, take the kids out, get them on the water, show them how to fish, catch a lot of things, as well as we just like to travel. So we'll travel around Fort Riley, go outside and see what's around the area to see what we like, because we like going to different stores, as well as like the kids, I'll let them pick out the ribs for me to smoke so that way they can eat them later. And normally we just have to stay home. Yeah.
No, that's nice. I like to hear all you guys talking about food, because one of my favorite things to do. But hey, look, as far as I'm concerned, I'll tell you guys, I'd like to share with you that, I've never been to Fort Riley before. Like I said, I got there almost at 27 years of serving. And I'll tell you, my family and I are pleasantly surprised. Having never been there before and pretty much been everywhere else, it's been great. I think personally the facilities are great on post. The housing is great. Again, I got there during COVID, obviously, so I haven't got a chance to explore a lot. But before we left, I did start, get out there some of those bike trails, as far as being able to either ride your bike or run or just walk. The adventure park, I got a chance to do that before, where they have the paintball, they have archery, they have the like an obstacle course, the warrior zone. It is on the other side of post from us, but it's there. And then I'm not much of a hunter fisher, but I do like to do it, and I know there's plenty of places around Fort Riley that you can do a lot of those things, as well as plenty of gym facilities, we have our D-Hop, we have our gyms in a box. I mean, the community all around at Fort Riley, I think, is great. I think it's definitely family-centric, family-oriented. I think it was Cam Clark that mentioned it. Making friends and acquaintances, if you will, neighbors, etc. Having getting together, especially now that COVID restrictions are starting to back off a little bit. I think those are all great things. And I'll tell you guys, I don't know about you, but before we deployed, talking to my wife, my family, and senior leaders, all I wanted was for that when we go home, when we get them off that plane, that we're not wearing a mask, our families are not wearing a mask, and we don't have to wear a mask anymore in Fort Riley. That was my one wish or hope for us as we get home at the end of this year. So that is that is looking like it's going to happen, and I'm excited. So with that, as we begin to wrap this up, gentlemen, I always hope that this gets out to the soldiers and some of our families, because I don't know if your families are tracking that we do this podcast, but I know my family is, and they've listened to the 3 episodes prior to this one, and so I bring that up because as we've been discussing family matters during this episode, as we depart, and I'd like to just offer it up to every one of you, starting with Captain Clark. If there's something that you'd like to say or share about, hey, Fort Riley or how important family is, or specifically to your family, what would that be?
The big thing that I would say, and it's going to be my party line for as long as I'm in the chaplain corps, and I hope and pray that it continues to be what I will leave and stand by when I retire someday, is that the reality is that what we do is important. There's no denying that. Like we have very important jobs for a very important organization, and all at once someday we're going to come home, and we're going to come home with our whole career relegated to a shadow box that'll collect dust on one of our dressers out in the living room or something, or in the little man cave or whatever. But ideally, you've lived your life and you navigate your career in such a way that you're going to come home to a spouse and to your kids who love you and are excited to see you and are thankful that you're in their lives. And the way that we do that is not by necessarily letting our careers or our obligation to service take a back seat, but learning how to navigate that well as a family. So I would encourage soldiers, and I encourage families of soldiers, keep open lines of communication with each other, right? You don't know that there's a problem necessarily unless somebody says there's a problem. Let's say that your family's overwhelmed because of your op tempo or something, and you really need a change of pace. Well, there's no way for you to know that it's bothering them to communicate. So I would say on both ends, communicate, be on the same page as one another, support one another, have that open line of knowing, how is this going? Is this path or is this lifestyle, is this op tempo, is this organization okay for us? And you keep moving forward and figuring out if it's not, it doesn't necessarily mean you get out. It might, but what it might mean is what do we do with our lives and how we structure our lives such that it is okay? How do I make this okay for you? And if you commit to that, and if you commit to walking that journey with that kind of communication, I think that you'll be successful, whether you're a private right out of basic training or whether you're a sergeant major with 28 years of military experience. You keep communicating with your families, and I think that you'll find that this journey, despite all of its frustrations, can really be a joy as well.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. Mr. Torres, what do you think?
Along the same lines of Chaplain Jones is, just to reiterate what he said, when your service is up, the Army will just keep on rolling. But the ultimate question is, what have you done to ensure that your family's there to support you and to say thank you for what you've done, and let's live our life now, and let's open the next chapter in our book. I think we're the only organization where, I think it's a blessing that we can have these kind of dialogues and communications. If you worked for a corporate America, they wouldn't be caring about what your family was. It'd be bottom line up front. So I think we're fortunate to be in this organization where we care about families, and we make that known to people. I just think that people need to be equipped with the tools to make that a reality, and people need to make that sacrifice. And like Chaplain Jones said, the family needs to come online as well. And the service member needs to be able to understand their family and kind of see when there is a concern, and maybe the family doesn't want to bring any more stressor to their service member. That service member needs to be able to step up and ask those pointed questions to get that information out of them, because they might not be willing to express it because they don't want to put undue stress on their service member. But overall, I think it's our responsibility to ensure that we keep those relationships open.
Yeah, thank you for that, gentlemen. Over to Sergeant Burafato. Any closing thoughts?
So basically, touching on what everyone else kind of said, every single post you go to, you're never going to find everything you want to do everywhere you go. Most military places, obviously, they put out in the middle of nowhere. We're fortunate enough that we have some small towns near us and some decent cities out there. So it's what, in terms of the post you're at, it's what you make of it. You can always find things to do. You can always try new things, see if you like it or not. So post the installation you're at is what you make of it. I'm fortunate enough that my wife is also prior military, prior deployment, or Iraq veteran. So in terms of making it through these deployments, we've done a pretty decent job of getting ourselves set up. My career is over. She's followed me, around the world. My kids have followed me part of the way too. And then once I retire, it's going to be my turn to, I don't want to say step back. I'm still going to need to work, but to step off to the side and part of her career in front of mine, because this whole time it's always been my career. Where the Army takes me, pushing me to get the rank. Now it's my turn to step off to the side, get a job, and be the same support role for her that she's been for me for the last going on 16 years next month. So that's the biggest thing for us. We were fortunate enough that we were able to sort of time it correctly. So by the time I get out, she'll have a few years left till she retires, and then we can take care of all those things afterwards. But I think finding that balance in terms of, hey, your job is done, but you're not done for good. Even if you're at home, retired, and just relaxing in your GD214 blanket, there's still work to be done. We still have things to do around the house. Now it's your turn to assume that role for her or for him, depending on married to a man or a woman. And then they can take over and focus on their career and focus on getting their retirement taken care of. So you find a good balance like that, I think your family will do well, and I think your marriage will hopefully continue to grow as it has been over these however many years you've been in.
All right, thank you for that, Sergeant Burafato. Sergeant Tillman, any thoughts?
I don't really have any thoughts. Just everybody's pretty much hit it right on the head with everything that they said. I agree with what everybody said. Just keep an open mind, consistent communication, and just working it out. And by the time you get out, you can switch roles with your spouse and take over for them and care for them even more than what you can now.
All right. Last but certainly not least, Captain Clark.
All right, Sergeant Major, you gave me some time to think of a worthy response now. So I'll just say that, closing comments is family life does not end when you're physically separated from your family. It's just, it morphs, it alters. Obviously, you're doing things differently. You're not doing things in person, but doesn't mean family needs to take a secondary role. It needs to remain primary, a priority for you. And just finding those ways that you can keep your relationship going long distance and looking forward to coming back and reuniting with them and planning for the future. I think that's the way to go, and kind of what you have to do to adapt to this Army lifestyle. But it's by no means impossible. It's difficult. It takes some time to learn and adapt to, but by no means impossible. And once you figure out a way to keep that going with your family, you be successful in your personal life and in the Army. Over.
All right. Well, all those comments were absolutely great, and I appreciate that. So again, I would like to first and foremost thank you all, gentlemen, for joining me today from Korea or wherever you are in Europe. This podcast is something that I hope is beneficial to our soldiers and potentially to our families if they decide to listen in on it. As far as I'm concerned, I can tell you that over the last 28 years, I've learned a lot, and a lot about family, a lot about dedication, a lot about the Army. And I can tell you one thing is the Army is absolutely a lifestyle. It is not a job. It's not an adventure, as we say some years ago. It is a lifestyle. You completely have to buy into it or not. But if you do, the journey is great. I mean, it's been wonderful for my family and I, provided a lot of opportunity for us. And I don't have any regrets. I wouldn't do it any other way. Not only that, but being part of the Big Red One and being stationed at Fort Riley has also been a great opportunity for us. And should this be, the last stop, which I hope not, but if it is, I couldn't have picked a better place to end it. And I hope that every one of us on the line today and our soldiers listening decide to give the Army an opportunity. And finding that balance between the Army and your family is going to be challenging, but I can tell you that it's worth it. So again, thank you for joining me today, and have a great, wonderful rest of your day or night. Demon 7 signing out.